have stories. Every single one of us. From the highest of the high to the lowest of the low, we all have stories. Exploring the world for the greatest stories of all time.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Aron O'Dowd Show.
The Aron O'Dowd Show. Our soul is the screen upon which we project our dreams. What's your story?
Hello and welcome on today's episode of the Aron O'Dowd Show. We got another amazing guest who's crunking the concrete jungle and making the impossible become possible in the world. Today's guest is Sandy Hart. Property, business, sales, this is your woman to go to. And hello and welcome to the show, Sandy. How are you doing?
I am terrific. Thank you so much, Aron. It's my honor. I'm so excited to be here.
Tell us about where you grew up and what it was like.
Well, I am distinctly Canadian and wearing the red and white Canadian colors today. I kind of giggled about that. It wasn't intentional. I grew up on the west coast of beautiful British Columbia, Canada, on an island now called Haida Gwaii. And when I was a little girl, it was called Queen Charlotte Islands, one of the most unbelievably natural forests in the world. And my family of 5 often could not hold hands around a tree. So incredible place to grow up. My dad is an adventurer. So fish boats, sailboats. I've been, in the ocean inside of a tide or a wave where I could see nothing but water around me. My dad is a pilot. He still has 2 airplanes. And so I've been dropped out of the sky and just have been extremely blessed to be Canadian and part of such an adventure life.
You're an adrenaline junkie from birth.
Pretty much. I'm not afraid of much, that's for sure.
That must have been cool being shot out of airplanes and all that,
Yes. Parasailing and climbing mountains and just really amazing adventure life, and not even recognizing how blessed I truly am until much later. When you're a child, you're just living it. And then later on, when you get into the rat race, you go, wow, most people didn't get to experience what I got to experience. And as far as survival, in the wilderness, because my oldest son, for example, lives in Calgary, Alberta, and there's millions of people there. And they had recently a major water line break. Like, these water lines, you can park a car in them, and the whole city was on rations and they were seriously in distress. And imagine a city like that running out of water. Like, what would they do? So yeah, those are the sort of moments where you think, when the internet goes down or you can't use your phone. For me, that is paradise. For me, it's like up the river in a river boat, which is a jet boat. No service, nobody can find you, nobody knows where you are, and you're miles from the next person. And even my own oldest brother says to me, "Sis, where do you put your heels when you're climbing those mountains?" I'm like, "Oh no, I don't look like this out there." So it's amazing. Very blessed.
And what did that sense of adventure teach you growing up?
Well, independence for sure, fearlessness. And I mean, not that I'm immune by any stretch, and I certainly have had to conquer those inner demons of insecurity, etc. But knowing that survival technique, growing up in a hunting home, etc., foraging for food, things like that, and then recognizing on the planet of the 8 billion people, how many people could say, if the internet went down and the grocery stores weren't open and all the things happened, there's no gasoline at the gas pumps, could you figure it out? And I'm not sure how many of those people could say, absolutely, but I could. So that's part of um yeah, it's just it's definitely not an arrogance, but it's a comfort. It's very much a and where I live, Aaron, is 4-hour drive to the next community. So where you live, I don't think that's conceivable because there's so many people, right? And one direction is 4 hours and the other direction is 6.5 hours. And there's one highway that comes through my town called the Alaska Highway, which all Americans definitely know where Alaska is, which is the last frontier. And I am closer to Alaska than I am to Vancouver, British Columbia. So for me to drive to Vancouver is 22 hours, and that's in my own province. And that's just how vast Canada is. And so yeah, I mean, I'm surrounded by trees and mountains and rivers and it's just stunning.
It sounds like you enjoy that environment and that set of playground that you play in.
I do, but I love going to the city. I do. I love all of it, all of the adventures of life. I definitely enjoy.
So you went to high school and college, and what was your adventure in there?
Well, my family moved off of that island when I was 13, and it was a very harsh slap of reality, and moved to in Queen Charlotte City where I grew up. There was 300 people, including the Haida Indian village, and the Haida are more talented, absolutely stunning human beings. They're just incredible and very artistic. So, they carve argillite, they do totem poles. I was there for the opening of the Longhouse in Skidegate in 1972 when our prime minister came to the tiny little island. And then we moved. My dad was the senior game warden, so senior conservation officer, and my mom was the court administrator and justice of the peace. So she actually signed search warrants and released prisoners, and my dad put people in jail. So it was all very strict and very as a teenager it was we were not exactly what you'd call popular kids when those are your parents. And so it was very eye-opening, and I went through being bullied, mean girls, like in the town before the one that I live in now, and really had a hard time, gained a lot of weight, that 13 to 16 years old, and and really unhappy for those few years. And then we moved to my finishing high school, the town that I'm in now. And I thought for sure my parents hated me, because who would move their children further north than what they'd already put them through? But it turned out to be the best place in the world, only 4 hours away. But because of the seclusion and remoteness of this town, people really care about each other, and which is how it was when I grew up. Only not 300 people, more like 3,000 people in this town. So definitely a little bit bigger. Then I graduated from high school and went out, set out to be the adventurer, moved to a city of about 800,000 people, and worked 3 jobs, and knew that I wanted to go into real estate. And so got my work ethic from waitressing and bartending, and very little sleep, and just go. And I knew people was my thing. I didn't per se go to university or college, but I did later when I knew that real estate was what I wanted to do. So yeah, and then home I came when I was 20, and then managed a flower shop and tripled sales in the flower shop in 5 years. and expanded and was just having a great time. But flowers wasn't my passion. Houses was. And I had this, of course, vision of what real estate would be. It was going to be mansions, out of magazines. And the reality was more like mobile homes and modest homes and fixer-uppers. But at 26, I entered the real estate world, and that was 29 years ago. And it's been both the biggest blessing and the biggest challenges of my life, because 18 years, Aron, were straight up. And then we hit an economic tsunami, I call it, because it was like hitting a brick wall. And being an industry town, we are a logging wood because we're surrounded by trees, and we have the most dense quality wood in probably North America because of the slow growth, and then oil and gas, and both of those industries shut down, and then it went into an absolute nightmare that is now 13 years and kind of running. We've been through a lot in my tiny little community. So that is how I found you, was through taking the massive challenge. So going from 6 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week as a top real estate agent in Western Canada, which I had no concept, no idea that how I did things was different than how most. And in my first 4 years, Aron, as a Remax agent, I soared to number 14 out of 6,600 Remax agents in Western Canada. And that is top 0.002% of the top real estate company in Canada. And what's shocking about that I had no idea, is that the town I live in is under 5,000 people and now under 3,000 people. And we've never had $1 million home sale. And so most of the world, like you go to Toronto or Vancouver, I mean, these are 4 million, 5 million. A friend of mine sold his condo for $12 million in Vancouver. And I'm like, okay, well, where I live, the highest, absolute top, the build was $2 million to build this particular home on 5 acres, 8-bay garage, absolutely stunning home, sold at its height for 835,000 Canadian dollars. So crazy.
It is. There's a lot to unpack here in this story. But what was that heart desire to be in property and house and real estate?
Well, it's to be in people, honestly. So real estate or shoes make zero difference if your heart is in helping people have a better life. And honestly, sales, recognizing that sales has a terrible reputation. Aron, my parents lost everything, their life savings. They couldn't claim bankruptcy because of their positions. They were pillars in our community. And as those particular government positions, bankruptcy was not an option. And so when I was 17, my mom and dad borrowed from both sets of grandparents to get out of their 18.75% mortgage back then in the 80s. And they were devastated because they had bought a brand new home, and then the economy had tanked in Fort St. John, our previous town. And then 4 months later, one of our neighbors from Fort St. John was an RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, so very trustworthy, called my parents to tell them that same house, same condition, had resold for almost double. So my mom and dad their opinion of real estate agents went through the floor and then through the ground and then through the hole in the earth into the devil's domain. They were mortified and mad as could be. So imagine at 26, when I stood before my parents to tell them that I was going to be a real estate agent, how my parents responded. So my father responded, couldn't you just be a prostitute and give us something to be proud of, if you can imagine? And then he said, Sandy, only lawyers have less integrity than real estate agents. So I actually almost did not go into real estate. I almost took that as, we totally do not agree with you going into that career. And yeah, as you know, a good girl, we do as we're told and follow our parents, right? And so, but I was born a feisty little carrot top, and I decided that I was going to prove my parents and the world wrong, that real estate agents could be both successful and have integrity. So off I went, and Aron, I sold my first home within 3 weeks, which the average is 6 months for a new real estate agent. And then it was just straight up success for me, because people is the only thing that matters to me. Is how can I make your life better? Period. That's that's a beautiful thing, but there's a little bit of a however to this, because growing up in the 70s and 80s, where we're hardwired to serve and self-care is selfish, I ended up with an illness, a health crisis. My top year in real estate, I had earned over $500,000 in personal commission, and which is ridiculous. Sandy, had sold over 100 houses. So imagine the amount of work that goes into selling a house. By the time, if you list it and you market it and you put a sign on it and you advertise it and then you show it to 10 sets of people, and then you write a contract, an offer, and then you have inspectors and bankers and insurance, and you go through all of these processes to get to the sold sign. And you do that 100 times in a year or more. It was, I think, 112 houses or 111 houses. And you think about how much energy. And now my children, I have 3 beautiful grown men that are all 6'4", 6'5", 6'5". So I know I fed them. I'm not sure about the rest. I mean, I love, oh, my boys are the most incredible humans I know. And thank God they forgive me for how hard I worked. And it wasn't because I had this ambition. It was because I was hardwired to serve. So the honor, if somebody wanted to deal with me, they got to deal with me. And it was the lay down my life to serve and then recognize. So I was 80 pounds more than I am now, and I couldn't get out of bed. I was in complete and utter paralysis, and I thought I was dying. My children, my youngest was 6 years old, and it was the worst day of my life. I'm not kidding. I cried all day thinking I was dying and that it was, cancer. I think we all just go to this place where it's like, it's got to be cancer. And then it was the tests, and I was tested for cancer, I was tested for lupus, I was tested for MS, I was and they couldn't figure out anything, and it ended up being chronic fatigue syndrome. And for anybody who is familiar, it's classic burnout. And it doesn't sound serious, but there are people who never work again because of chronic fatigue syndrome. And I am so blessed because I did what I do, which was went inward and then started to research, what does health look like? Because recognizing I was 40 years old and it was like I was 100 or 105. Like I literally, if I could shower in a day, that was miraculous. And this went on for months. And yeah, I still had these young kids and they were in hockey and, all the Canadian things that we do. And swimming and my middle son is a lifeguard now and all the things. And I don't know how I survived. I have no idea how I got through that. But I do know one thing, that the most important thing in the world is definitely not money or love. It is your health. And if and you don't recognize it, I think we have this wiring that says I'll be perfectly healthy forever. Like I don't ever have to think about this when we're young, and we're bulletproof and off we go into this nightmare abyss. So what a blessing it turned out to be, because now it is, my days start very differently than they used to. They used to start with coffee, and even though I ate scrambled eggs and turkey bacon and I walked 5 kilometers a day, because I was living in such a state of chronic stress, my cortisol levels were through the roof, and my body was holding on to weight and toxins and all the things. And so then I became a health coach, like on the side. I was still a real estate agent, and just became absolutely manic about what does health look like. And that's been one of my favorite journeys. However, it's only one. It's only one of the pillars of a successful life. And so it's great, you see people that then put health first and nothing else, right? It's that pendulum, where it's like, okay, over here is, success on paper. And this was one of my revelations in life, Aron, was what is success? Because in my broker's course in UBC, in University of British Columbia, they teach you human motivators, and that humans are motivated by money, recognition, and lifestyle. And I, again, back to that programming of the 70s and 80s, and being especially female, and then add Canadian on there, where we say sorry more than anyone else in the world. And 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 I was adamant that those were not my motivations. I was only motivated by service and making other people's lives happy. And to most of a degree, that was true. However, why would you do that if you didn't want to be recognized as valuable? So delving into the health world, I ended up over into the mental and emotional and spiritual health world, because you can't have one without the other, truly. And then it all sort of started to bleed into the financial success and business, because how do we change the world, Aron, if it's not a reciprocal give and take, that beautiful infinity of the number 8. And so that has been 15 years of the most incredible journey to the center of my soul, to recognize that I do want to be recognized. I definitely want to be recognized as valuable in the world. That is just the truth. Money is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and that allows us to make a bigger difference in the world. And then lifestyle is, don't we all deserve to live the dream, like to who is it that says, I think it's Darren Hardy, that says success is doing what you want, when you want, where you want, with who you want, anytime. And Darren Hardy is was the editor-in-chief of Success magazine. Are you familiar with his work?
No, I'm not until now.
Okay, so I met him at a RE/MAX International conference in Las Vegas, and he was the keynote speaker. And Dave Liniger is the founder of RE/MAX Internet, co-founder, he and his wife, Gail, and magnificent humans. And Darren Hardy's whole gamut, he wrote a book called The Compound Effect. And it's a magnificent book if you're into, I've got it on Audible, I've read it in paper a couple of times, and it's just outstanding. But Dave Liniger is now 50 years ago, if it's over 50 years, that he and his wife stepped out of the old model of real estate, which was a 50-50 split. The broker keeps 50% of the commission, and then the buying agent and the sales agent split the other 50%. And it's brilliant for the brokers if you have a lot of agents, and especially high performing agents, because those agents pay a lot of money into the brokerage. And I never had any problem with that model as I was starting out and getting going. And my first 10 years, I paid 50% of my commission to my broker. And in those years, seeing that RE/MAX had a different model, their model, they stepped out of that, and their model is you pay your share of the office expenses, every agent pays. So you pay for desk, and then you pay your own signage, your own advertising, your own, whatever it is. And then you keep 100% of your commission. And that kicked up so much dust in our industry. It was touch and go for decades, where they almost went out of business many times, and they were at one point even in bankruptcy, and the real estate boards were trying to push them out. And this is the old hierarchical, models of, the golden rule. Whoever's got all the gold makes the rules, and that's just how it is, right? And so I love following these as mentors, and you and I share a couple of mentors. And it's just such a beautiful thing to find the people that are making the difference that you want to make in the world, and then follow them and study them. And Dave Liniger released a book this spring in 2024 called The Perfect 10. And it's the 10 leadership principles, something. And it's brilliant. It's like a 457 page or something book, but it is absolutely phenomenal. And one of my favorite quotes that he has in there is, if I could buy people for what they believe they're worth and sell them for what I know they're worth, I would be a rich man. And I think, well, could you define rich for me? Because this man, he's very successful. But isn't that amazing, Aron? Like, if we could buy people for what they believe they're worth, and then show them what they're really worth, and put them into the world. And that is now my passion. That is why I'm here doing this with you, is because I recognize that most of us are still playing small. Most of us fear sales, for one, because sales, as my father made very clear, has a terrible reputation, and often for good reason. Real estate, Aron, real estate in Business Wire, David Coffey, there's different reports, but Canada, the UK, and Australia are reported that 14% of those polled trust real estate agents or estate agents where you are. And in the US, it's 11% trust real estate agents. So this is not a poll that says, do you trust your real estate agent? This is in general, as an industry, do you trust real estate agents? That is over 85% of those polled in the world do not trust real estate agents. So that is an uphill battle that I am willing to climb, that I am willing to take on and say, no, you know what? Extracting those incredible humans that are still playing small and infusing their and recognizing our number one asset in business. Do you know what it is, Aron?
No, tell me.
It's our reputation. What does the world see when they see you? And we build that one person at a time, one interaction at a time, one podcast interview at a time, where you delve in and you find out what is the core fundamental truth about this person. And then you make a decision about who they are and how they show up and what their value is in the world, right? Makes sense? So where do we get our reputation though?
Where? From building out and doing things, and the question is where, it's in us.
Right. And it comes from our identity. So this is you and I share. Lee Tunnyware, who we both love dearly, he does the inside work. So reputation is external. That is what the world sees. But identity is our internal number one asset, because we cannot outperform, outsell, outsucceed our identity. So when we're playing small, Aron, when we are well under our potential, which is 97, 99% of the humans out in the world are still playing at a lower level. And to quote again Dave Linegar's book, he talks about when his wife was in a terrible, terrible plane crash and barely made it. She was in a coma for 2 months and then in hospital for years. She still got braces and like one on her arm and one on her ankle. And the story makes me cry every single time I read it about, and anyways. And in her hospital room, he put a terrarium full of plants because she loves live plants. And because hospitals have to stay clean, like sterile, it had to be encased in a terrarium. And so this terrarium was in there for months and months and months and started to grow mildew and mold. And so he said to Gail, she was awake now, I'm going to take that home and I'll bring you a new one. So that's what he did. And what he realized was when he took the plants out of that terrarium and potted them in their home, some of those plants grew to 15 feet, Aron.
Wow.
But in the terrarium, they only grew to that glass ceiling. And we've all heard the glass ceiling thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, and to watch and listen to Dave Linegar speak, he really speaks to that we all have our inner terrarium, that glass ceiling that says this is as big as I can grow. And then along comes somebody, i.e. mentorship, our dear Dave Linegar, or you in the Olympic world, or the, high performance, whatever it is that your challenge is nonsense. There's steps, and it's that Olympic difference, the difference between on the podium and not at all is milliseconds, right, Aron? You know this from your rowing.
Mm-hmm.
tiny, right? Minuscule, yet it's colossal, right? In outcome. So yeah, so that identity work, and Bob Proctor, for example, if you know who Bob Proctor was, did a lot of work around the identity. I'm so happy and grateful now that, and just and reprogramming our, what did he call them? It was our, do you remember?
Oh, just a long time I read it.
Yeah, no, it's fine, but yeah, so getting into where our identity comes from, and the shift in our identity is, again, back to that inside work and mentorship of somebody like our Lee Tunnyware, who doesn't let us hide. Like, right, Aron, I know. Holy man, if you want to go and go hard, this is the man, this is the community, our community inside of Brexit and inside of authentic networking, and meet this man. Like, if you see us and we invite you to one of those events, they're free except for your time, but make sure that you come. And I'm blessed to be doing some stuff with Lee, Sandra D, and Gareth Wax, and called the Entrepreneurial Genius Group and the Four Horsemen. And we're doing some really cool stuff there. So there's lots of opportunity to delve into, to even get this sneak peek, because not everybody's ready for that depth of complete transformation. But it's that inspiration versus transformation, right? We've all got the internet at our fingers. And so we've got access to everything that we could possibly want to know about how to be, do, and have everything we want. And that's the thing, right? Is most are looking for, what do I need to do to have what I want, and then I will be happy. But it's when you be that identity of that incredibly happy, successful, contributing inner Goliath that you are, and you just show up regardless of what mountain is in front of you, then it becomes the terrarium. You blow the lid off it, and there you are, growing into this new version of yourself that you feel so incredibly different, because you know that you're contributing and that you are valuable. And success, Aron, I know that you would agree with me, is a feeling. It's a feeling of victory every single day, because you showed up, right? And you're doing things like this, putting a podcast out when, you're not necessarily positive about how to do it or how it shows up or how it's, but you just do it anyway, right?
Yes. What is success looking for you, Sandy? Because I feel that, you're number 14 in a huge amount of number. To get to that takes a huge amount of work. Then you have a life curveball and thinking, where will I go? How I go? But what does success look for you and feel for you?
Wow, thank you for that stellar question. It's interesting because 3 years ago we lost my mom, and having watched my mom stressed out of her mind my entire life, she she just gave all. She was such a spectacular woman. She both ran the courthouse, did all the things, and then she also had a flower shop. That was her passion. And then she had a restaurant, and she's an amazing cook, and then this incredible nan to my children, and so loving and so caring. And my dad, she doted on. And then she ended up with type 2 diabetes, and then she ended up having mini strokes, and then she had a 10-year journey through dementia. And witnessing that, success changed for me. So success on paper and the community believing that you're valuable is definitely no longer success to me, if that makes sense. And then the conversations have become much deeper. who you surround who I surround myself with matters in a big, big, big way because of that sort of crabs in a bucket where I live, especially. Most people drink alcohol and smoke cigarettes and smoke weed and do whatever. And I don't I'm not here to judge anybody, but that is the general surroundings, and it's considered okay. I go to Calgary where my son is, and almost nobody drinks alcohol. Nobody can afford to smoke cigarettes or want that for their health. And weed, what is weed? Like I don't encounter it. It's astounding to me. So I now really ask the questions. My parents thought drinking every day was very acceptable. I don't, right? I have a different idea of what I think is acceptable without judgment. It's very much a different identity, right? I used to smoke. It blows my mind. It's been 25 years, but I actually used to smoke because as a little girl, it was cool. Like, what? Oh my God, are you kidding me, right? And so, giving that up it changed my identity. I identify as a non-smoker. I try not to judge others for smoking, but I know that it's a different identity and mindset that makes you choose. If that's something that you do, you have a different value of yourself, your health, your body, your smell, your clothes, your environment, those things. And so again, without judgment, and back to my mentor, Dave Liniger, and this hit home for me so massively. Every single person has equal value. We're all valuable. However, not every single person shares my values and deserves my time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's powerful. It makes sense when you break it down like that.
Right. So in his book, he was explaining how, some broker owners, for example, and I mean, Remax broker owners are hardworking, dedicated, holy crap people. So, I mean, now you've got sort of an upper echelon of achievers and success. However, now you take a man like that who's got 130,000 agents in his organization. And yes, this lifts you to the top, 25%, 20%, or 10% even. I don't know what the numbers exactly are brokers, but that's still 13,000 if it's 10%. How does he choose where to put his energy? And he says, so you have a broker owner like I was, who had 6 agents, a single office in this tiny town at the end of the road. And not that he doesn't value me in his organization, he completely does. And at international events, I have one of my favorite pictures is, with my Lifetime Achievement Award with Dave Liniger. However, if he's going to leave Denver, Colorado and fly somewhere, it's going to be to the broker owner who has 4 offices in Calgary area or whatever that has, 100 agents, not 6, if that makes sense. Because we have to, as humans, allocate our time and our energy to what we truly want in our inner reality. So, when Lee speaks to that surrounding ourselves by 5 people, he actually rebuttals that. He's not a big fan. He's like, you choose you. You breathe for you, you think for you, and you decide for you. You know this, right? And it's like, I don't care what 5,000 people around you are doing. You, and he calls you out on your inside. Stand up on the inside. And I love that. And I'm so grateful to be part of this community because for the first time in my life, I intrinsically consider success as an inside game and a feeling of no regrets, playing full out. How did I show up? And and forgiving myself if I can't show up today as much as I was able to show up yesterday, especially because chronic fatigue syndrome is something that once you have it, it knocks when you allow yourself to get knocked down and you over produce. And being a recovering overachiever, disease to please, as Oprah calls it, the disease to please, is it's an uphill battle every single day, not to give away your energy, right? So success in my world is a feeling. It is a feeling of euphoria. It is a feeling of showing up as my best self today and forgiving myself if this isn't the best I've ever been, but it's the best I have today. Because my son, my oldest son, he is one of my main inspirations in my life. He is 33 years old. He is the owner of Asante Wealth Management, the Beacon Family Group in Calgary, Alberta, married to an incredible lady who's a chiropractor and expecting their second little human. And he says to me one day, Aron, I was coming down the stairs and he says, "Hey, Mom, do you think that people are doing the best they can?" And I said, "Hell no." And he started to laugh and he said, "Really? Mom, are you judging other people or are you judging you?" And I was like, "Ooh, probably me, probably me." And he said, "Right. So would you not think that given all circumstances, with all the tools and all the environmental stimulus, people are not doing the best they can?" And I'm like, no, the world is in distress. People can be doing better. I can be doing better. I know I can do better than I'm doing. So then his wife, my daughter-in-law, Marley, she comes home and I mean, she is brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. She chose not to be an emergency doctor because she didn't want that lifestyle. So she's a chiropractor, which is, the same amount of 8 years of schooling and in the medical field, etc. And so she's, genius. And she comes home and she says to me, "Did Corey ask you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She said, "What'd you say?" I said, "Hell no." She goes, "Yes, we're on the same team." And I was like, okay, so we're right, he's wrong. That's good. It's official. So then my son says to me, "Mom and Marley, Brene Brown has an interview where she is asked, are people doing the best they can?" And Aron, oh my God, if you've ever followed anything about Brene Brown, I've read all her books. Love, love, love this woman. She's out of Texas. And of course, we've got some people in our community out of Texas. And it's like the country of Texas, right? Sandra D and yeah, Jenny now. And it's like Texas is its own thing. Like if you're from Texas, you're kind of a different club. And I love it. So Brene, she's, her first book on shame and vulnerability. And she just really speaks to like that. Those are things that you do not, invite into your life whatsoever. And she, as a researcher and whatnot. But this interview, and I can't remember who it's with, might have been Jay Shetty or something, but she delves into are people doing the best they can? And how she herself judging whether mothers breastfed until a year, and like her friend judging, and then her response because she had stopped breastfeeding before a year, and the shame story and how we judge each other, and who says who's doing the best that they can. So yeah, it's worth watching. I won't ruin the ending for you, but it's very, very worth watching. So again, back to that, what is success? And for me, it really is doing the best I can and showing up in my own life for my family and friends and my community, and extracting from my own mentorship clients their innate ability to increase their identity. And I had a recent client, and she had been in business for 10 years and not yet had a client. And you know, that eternal student that we think we need to know more before we can put ourselves out there. And it's the identity, it's the imposter syndrome, it's the perfection paralysis, where we think we have to know everything before we can be a mentor. But to a third grader, a fourth grader is God, right? So that is the most important little piece. To a third grader, a fourth grader is God. We only need to be one step ahead of our ideal client and the people that our heart lights up to serve and to make better in the marketplace, right? And in the world. So for you, for example, you're a high performer, mentorship stuff, and you think, what have you done? It's not about what are your credentials, what have you got on paper, what university. It's the you have a PhD of life, and you're playing small. Marianne Williamson, right? You're playing small is not serving the world. It is not. And it is actually selfish, because it means you're in your comfort zone instead of out there in the what Brene Brown says, in the ring of life, right? In the getting dirty and beaten up. And your opinion doesn't matter to Brene Brown unless you are in that ring and you are getting your ass kicked in the real realm of entrepreneurship. And speaking of which, to our incredible book that is upcoming. We haven't got a release date yet, have we? What's the latest you've heard?
I'm the same. I'm looking forward to this book, and success is a very interesting topic that is so broad and so narrow at the same time. But I wonder, is that tested in the crisis, both in our lives and in your life as well, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. So the storms of life and the book, The School of Hard Knocks. And I don't know, did you cry, Aron, when you were writing your chapter? I freaking cried. No? Yes? A little bit?
A little bit.
Okay. This is not there's that beautiful tiny little bit. Not me. Like, I ugly cried. The recognition of where my values came from is what I got from writing that chapter. And the third iteration, the first one, Aron, I was a victim. I wrote every terrible thing that my parents ever did or said to me that made me play small, and because I was, imposter syndrome massively. And it was terrible how the things that I wrote. And then iteration number 2, it was extracting the gifts from those moments in life that were difficult as a child, and then recognizing what it was that they were teaching me. And so for me, how incredible that journey into the third iteration, where I could say, my dad taught me integrity. And in my house growing up, you lie, you die was the mantra. And I'm not even joking. Like, oh, there's no such thing as gray. It's like you either tell the truth or you don't tell the truth. And the belt was real at my house. Let's just say that. So integrity, and again, Brene Brown's, her take on integrity is my favorite. And of course, in my house, my dad's was basically tell the truth and be a good person. But Brene, if you're familiar with what she says, integrity means choosing courage over comfort. It means choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, or easy. And it means practicing your values, not just professing them. So how many people do we know that sort of, profess that they have, for example, integrity? Integrity is my core center, most important. If you want to fight with me, call me out and suggest that I don't have integrity and I will take you down. Like that is just how it is. And and then realizing that that came from those school of hard knocks moments. And I have a little story of I was 4 years old and my dad's boss and his family had Tang, which I don't know if you have Tang over there on that side, but it's orange, it's like sugar orange juice crystals for like Kool-Aid, orange flavored, and chocolate chips. And my house growing up, we didn't have those things. We had like carrots and maybe an apple, like, right? So they had invited me into their home and and fed me all this silly stuff that I always felt that I didn't have. And then they said to me, Sandra, because I was Sandra then, not Sandy, you're welcome to come on over anytime. You can have all the Tang and all the chocolate chips in the world, all you want. Well, I took them at their word and they weren't home one day and I went in and I helped myself and I came out and I was covered in orange crystals and chocolate and I was a happy little girl. And my dad went crazy, like lunatic crazy. He was, and I mean, I had to grow all the way up before I could recognize that he was embarrassed. He was ashamed. He was, he didn't know that he thought I broke into these people's house. It was his boss. And right. So here's his little girl. So I got the licking of my life and was locked in my room and not allowed to have dinner. And it was Thanksgiving and blah, blah, blah. And I had this big story about it. And in my head as a little girl, Aron, I was unlovable. I was already unlovable because I was born a redhead into a family of beautiful people. My mom was a baby model. She was like Shirley Temple. And so I was born this feisty little carrot top with see-through skin, and they put me in pink. And my mom's like, she told everybody, Sandra was ugly. And so little girl, again, my story in my head was I was unlovable. And so I became this little servant, which has indeed served me very well, sort of, mostly. And so doing the chapter in the book and recognizing, this is where this comes from. And I would lay down my life before I would lie to you. Like people ask me to lie all the time. And like, this is not a gray zone. It is a hell no. And I mean, the whole world didn't get that gift of a dad who, it was the capital punishment if you did something outside of integrity, right? So then on to my values number 2 and number 3, which are service. So my mom is definitely who taught me to serve. And number 3 is excellence. So again, my mom, I was 4 years old. I was 4 years old, Aron, when I started cleaning the bathroom. Oh my gosh, when I think about that little girl with Comet Cleanser, which is like a bleach abrasive, and I still have Comet Cleanser. I use all natural products, but I have a can of Comet Cleanser because it'll take permanent marker off anything and all the things. So that became my job for the rest of my life, was like from 4 years old, but so did clearing the table, so did doing the laundry, and I could make bread by the time I was 8 years old. And so I just became this, my friends nicknamed me Sandarelli from Cinderella. And they all thought my parents were terrible terrible humans, abusive and neglectful, and we were just these hard done by kids, but we were really loved, like, but we had strict rules. And I mean, we were hugged and told we were loved every night. Like, it wasn't one side and not the other. It was both sides of love and discipline. And so I didn't feel like I was abused, that's for sure. And then with the excellence, if I missed a spot, if I was dusting and I didn't pick everything up and dust under it, my mom would say, start over. And I'd be like, start over? And she'd be like, start again. Do it again, Sandra. Do it again. And that instilled in me this level of, if you're going to do it right the first time. And do it to the absolute maximum of your ability. And so the gifts, and so doing the chapter, and I think that the tears came from the grief of recognizing how hard I was on my parents, because I played this little victim. My mom and dad were so awful. They taught me all these really cool values. Look at them. They're horrible people. and today it is like that. I can stand on my head and juggle the universe. And when I was working 6 a.m. to midnight, between, work and, school lunches and I recognized there's nothing, Aron, that I feel like I can't do because of those values that came from the school of hard knocks and those many, many blessings. So I've been privileged to read many of the chapters, and all of the authors inside of that book have similar magnificent transformations and the recognition of the hard knocks being the biggest blessings of our lives, because they transform us into this new community of kick-ass entrepreneurs. Hey?
It sure is, and it's amazing what it brings, the chapters where it brings out our nuts, our bolts, our skeletons, and everything. Sandy, I want to say thank you so much for coming to the show. It's been a blast and excitement, and wow.
Thank you, Aron. It has been such an honor. I really hope your community gets a nugget or two out of that, and many blessings from Canada. And you are such a superstar. I hope I share, and you are, oh my gosh, so magnificent. I'm so blessed to have you in my life. Thank you, Aron.
Thank you for listening to the Aron O'Dowd Show, where the world's best stories are told. If you like, please post a review or subscribe to the show. To find out more, contact us at aronodowd.com. That's ARONODOWD.com. We're always ready to share another magnificent tale from the world's best storytellers. So stay tuned and rock on.